Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Codo's Cinema. That's right, we are in our third episode of Codo's Cinema. Can you believe that? I mean, this is the third time I'm doing it. On Monday. Yeah, that's actually exciting. Anyway, I am your host, Mark Codo, and today we are going to do my top 10 favorite third installments in movies. So similar to last week where I talked about the top 10 movie trilogies, I'm talking about a third movie in a trilogy. So yes, that's what I'm doing today. My top 10 favorite third installments. All right. So basically, spoiler alert. I forgot to say spoiler alert last week, but I am saying spoiler alert for this episode because you may come into some spoilers on the movies I'm going to talk about. So anyway, and some of the third installments will be from prequels as well, and like I said last week, I have nothing against the prequels, despite their flaws. But sometimes a third installment in a prequels can count as a third installment at times. All right, good. All right. I'm about to start off with my number 10. Kicking off with number 10 is The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. Kicking off this list is the conclusion to the Hobbit trilogy. Now, last week, as I mentioned about the Hobbit trilogy is based off of one book, which is The Hobbit, or as what many people like to call it, There and Back Again. That's just basically the name of the book. Now, the Book of the Hobbit is one book, and the movies and the three movies of the Hobbit trilogy is split into three movies. Now, the Battle of the Five Armies is the conclusion to the Hobbit trilogy. Now, what makes this my favorite third installment is basically of how it's all concluded. Like the Hobbit trilogy is concluded, which leads up to the Lord of the Rings. So basically, the action sequences were amazing due to the title of the film, because throughout the film we get to have a huge battle between the men, elves, dwarves, orcs, and eagles. Although I think wargs, if I'm saying it correctly, because I did read the book back in high school, which was men, elves, dwarves, orcs, and wargs. Or goblins, I should say. There were actually goblins in the book. So anyway, continuing forward, I also liked how the film opens up with Smaug destroying Lake Town, since in the book Smaug was the one who destroyed Lake Town, but also getting defeated by Bard the Bowman, played by Luke Evans, and Smaug being voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch. And I like how the film opens up. They defeated Smaug in Lake Town. Now, continuing forward, the performances of the cast were great. As always, Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins was great, including Ian McKellen's performance as Gandalf the Grey. The visual effects were good. I know a lot of people have stated that some of the visual effects are split down the line between good and bad, but I thought the visual effects were good. Howard Shore's musical score is great, and at least the film gives audiences an exciting conclusion, as I mentioned, and it helps kick off the Lord of the Rings trilogy with the One Ring. That's literally an amazing part of why I like this movie. And sad thing is, Thorin Oakenshield, the leader of the dwarves, did pass away in that movie, just like in the book. For those of you who didn't read the book, Thorin Oakenshield passed away in the book. Yes, that's kind of a spoiler alert for those of you who have not read the book. But since I read the book, I kind of know what happened. And for some of you who have seen the movie, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys knew what happened. All right, moving forward. Number 9, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Well, it looks like we're going back to Star Wars again, huh, folks? Prequel trilogies once more. Oh, even though it's the 6th installment of the Star Wars prequel. It may be the 6th installment of the Star Wars franchise, but it still counts as a third installment of the prequel trilogy. And like I mentioned, I have nothing against the prequel trilogies or any prequels. I think they're good despite their flaws, and Episode 3 is no exception. Even though it's the 6th installment in the franchise, it's still a third installment in the prequel trilogy. Sure, the writing may not be good. I mean, yeah, we had some writing issues, but I thought some of the writing was pretty good in episode 3, and the performances of the cast, particularly Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, was outstanding and amazing. The visual effects were great, and as always, John Williams' score was brilliant, especially the final battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. That is still a major highlight in episode 3, which is considered to be my favorite lightsaber battle of all time. Which, speaking of which, the action sequences were also great too. Now, it did kick off the original Star Wars trilogy at the end of episode 3, not to mention making way for future Star Wars movies, which includes Rogue One, which it did help kick off the Rogue One Star Wars movie, which came out in 2016. But anyway, episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is considered to be my favorite third installment of all time in the prequel Star Wars prequel trilogy. All right, moving on. Number 8, Despicable Me 3. Animation movies do have their fair share of third installments, whether it's depending on what studio they come from, like Disney, DreamWorks, Universal, Nickelodeon, Paramount, or depending on the type of studio. So anyway, now I know a lot of people were kind of split about Despicable Me 3. Now, I thought the movie itself was actually good, and it does have a good third installment. Like, the animation, as always, is good. The voice cast performance, which includes Steve Carell's performance as Gru, with a surprise new character, or should I say, Gru's twin brother Drew, which is also being voiced by Steve Carell. What's also another surprise is that Trey Parker of South Park plays Balthazar Brat, a new villain that Gru has to face off in the third Despicable Me movie. Now, I thought Balthazar Brat was an amazing villain in the third Despicable Me movie. Like he has a thing for 80s for the 80s, which I thought was actually a good touch because of the 80s soundtrack that literally gave, which I think gave Baby Driver and Guardians of the Galaxy's Volume 2's soundtrack a run for their music. Now, that's just my point. because the soundtrack of Despicable Me 3 was great, which literally fits into Balthazar Brat's character. Anyway, the Minions were also good. I mean, we didn't really get to see much of the Minions in Despicable Me 3 since they all split up with Gru. They split up with Gru due to the fact of how Gru got fired from the AVL, or the Anti-Villain League, for not stopping Brat. But at least they saved the diamond. But anyway, continuing forward, I thought the action sequences were good. Were actually pretty good. There were some action sequences that I liked, including some moments from the Minions. Were also very good too. Anyway, overall, I enjoyed the third Despicable Me movie, and I can't wait to see what the second Minions movie will bring pretty soon, and sometime in the 2020s. Sometime in the 2020s for a new Minion movie. All right. Moving forward, number 7, Thor Ragnarok. As I mentioned with the animations, superhero films have no shortage of standalone third installments. And Thor Ragnarok is no exception. Anyway, Thor Ragnarok is considered by many to be a major improvement over the first 2 Thor movies due to the tone, story, and plot. Although the action sequences and performances were good as always, which the first 2 Thor movies did as well, although what was actually different is basically the tone. Like, they went from a dramatic, dark tone in the first 2 Thor movies to a more lighthearted and funny tone, while also putting in some darker moments in the film. Now the plot itself was actually great. They literally tackled the Ragnarok storyline, as well as the Planet Hulk storyline, which is also great, which literally sets up the plot for Thor to take down Hela, played by Kate Blanchett. Now, surprisingly, Thor lost his hammer. For those of you who have seen Avengers: Infinity War, Thor gets a new new weapon in the third Avengers film, and in the third Thor movie, he loses his hammer Mjolnir. Spoiler alert. Anyway, everything I like about Thor Ragnarok is great. Literally everything great. Not to mention the mid-credit scene sets up Avengers: Infinity War perfectly, very well, and that's why I consider Thor Ragnarok as one of my favorite third installments of the Thor trilogy. All right, moving forward. Number 6, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It may be a prequel, but it serves as a third installment of Sergio Leone's spaghetti western trilogy. Considered by many to be the greatest movie and western movies of all time, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is remembered by many. I feel like it's remembered by many by the musical score by Ennio Morricone. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think that's how I'm saying it correctly. And as always, Clint Eastwood's performance as the man with no name, or as what Tuco likes to say it, Blonde. Clint Eastwood's performance was good. Like I said, the musical score was amazing. The final standoff was probably one of the most memorable moments of the film, because not only of the cinematography, but also the music and the close-up shots of all three characters, including Clint Eastwood's character. Like, literally amazing. Amazing finale to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and that's why it's considered to be my number 6 of my top 10 favorite third installments. All right, moving forward. Number 5, Captain America: Civil War. This won't be the last superhero movie on this list, because this is the film that kicked off Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe with a different tone, a dark tone. Now, yes, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to say, like, Captain America, the Winter Soldier had the exact same tone as Civil War. But to be clear, though, Civil War, in fact, literally set up future MCU films, because of the fact of how in Captain America: Civil War, the Avengers split up. They had to fight each other because of the fact in Avengers: Age of Ultron, they literally destroyed they destroyed Sokovia, even though it was Ultron who destroyed Sokovia. But anyway, this is basically a backlash between the people who are a fan of the Avengers, while those who disagree, who don't like how the Avengers really destroy things and not help out, even though they do. Anyway, I liked how the film literally still have amazing action sequences. Actually, fun fact, director David Leitch also took part of the film. I think he was one of the unit directors in the film, and I'm pretty sure he might have did some stunts in there, but I could be wrong. But David Leitch was also one of the unit directors in the film. So yeah, I guess that's why the action sequences were also amazing, including new additions, which includes Spider-Man and Black Panther. Spider-Man is played by Tom Holland, and Black Panther is played by Chadwick Boseman. And both of these characters in Civil War were great and amazing. And the final battle between Iron Man and Captain America remains as one of the greatest battles of all time. And also mentioned, Captain America was also reunited with Bucky Barnes, a.k.a. the Winter Soldier, played by Sebastian Stan. And as always, Chris Evans' performance as Steve Rogers, a.k.a. Captain America, is great too. All right, moving forward. Number 4, The Dark Knight Rises. Even though Marvel films have their fair share of third installments, and including superhero movies, DC does have their fair share in third installments too, particularly one of their greatest DC movies of all time, The Dark Knight Trilogy. Now, The Dark Knight Rises is the epic conclusion to Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Trilogy. As always, Christopher Nolan brings in a great direction to his films, particularly The Dark Knight Rises, including his Dark Knight film. The story was good, and Hans Zimmer's score gives us hype and thrill. And the performances of Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, was great, as well as Tom Hardy's addition to the villain Bane, and he was amazing as well. Even though, just my opinion, even though he won't top Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, I think Tom Hardy as Bane was great. He was great. And literally everything that Christopher Nolan did in the Dark Knight trilogy was amazing, with the story, characters, musical score, and everything. I think he did a great job, and I thought the conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy with the Dark Knight Rises was great and amazing. And I think that's all I have for the Dark Knight Rises anyway. All right, moving forward. Number 3, Back to the Future, Part 3. We are going back in time to the Old West. That's right. 1882. The conclusion to the Back to the Future trilogy goes back in time to the Old West. No, not 1882. I mean 1885. My bad. 1885, not 1882. I might be thinking of another movie. My bad. Okay, anyway. So basically, this movie takes place in the Old West in 1885. And as always, the chemistry between Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd as Marty McFly and Dr. Emmett Brown is still great. What I like about the third film is how it concludes the Back to the Future trilogy. Not only the characters are still memorable, including one of Biff Tannen's ancestors, Buford Mad Dog Tannen, which is still being played by Thomas F. Wilson. As always, Thomas F. Wilson brings in an amazing performance as the titular villain Biff Tannen, which even his ancestors still has the same type of connection and relation to Biff Tannen. But anyway, as always, the characters are memorable. Setting is also great, and including Alan Silvestri's score, which is also memorable. I also like the train sequence where they try to use the train to bring Marty McFly back to 1985, and that's actually one of the most amazing action sequences of all time. It leaves me and the audiences in the seats, literally leaves everybody on the edge of their seats, literally by thrill, excitement of this sequence. Literally, the train sequence in Back to the Future 3 is literally amazing, as well as everything, including how Marty McFly gets back to 1985 and soon realizes how his future was also fixed thanks to the aforementioned Back to the Future Part 2, where the future of Marty McFly got fired from his job. But at least in 1985, he almost crashed into a car, which I liked how he decided not to race Needles, one of his former bullies, in Back to the Future Part 3. I like how he altered it, deciding not to go for that race anyway, for that car race anyway. That was actually a pretty good idea. Probably pretty smart move on Marty McFly. All right, moving forward. Number 2, Avengers Infinity War. I'm pretty sure some of you may see number 1 coming after I do Avengers Infinity War, but before going into the Avengers Infinity War, I actually had this as my number 1 choice. But going through other third installments, there was some competition. There was a lot of competition between these third installments. So anyway, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys may see number 1 in a different way. All right, moving on. Captain America: Civil War and The Winter Soldier may have changed the tone to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Infinity War gave it a run for its money. That's right. That's right. Or should I say a run for its Infinity Stones? Yep, because Thanos got all 6 Infinity Stones in Avengers Infinity War. All right. The story was all over the place because of the hype for this movie. And I'm not messing around. I'm not kidding. I mean, the story itself was literally all over, literally left and right. So much hype going on for Avengers Infinity War, even though Endgame did a lot more hype. But Infinity War literally had audiences literally left and right, going all over the place. Literally picking up where Thor Ragnarok ended. ended with Thanos, with the opening scene with Thanos and his army literally retrieving the Tesseract, and literally killing Loki as well as Heimdall and half of the other Asgardians, but at least some of them escaped. So anyway, that was a little spoiler alert for those who have not seen Infinity War yet. But anyway, I'm sorry. This was a very hyped movie. But continuing forward, the performances of the cast was great, including a new addition with Josh Brolin as Thanos. He was an amazing villain. Thanos was an amazing villain. He had a motive. He knew what he wanted to do, and he did at the end of the movie. Literally wiping out half the universe. That was literally a dark moment for a lot of people, including fans all around. And continuing on, the visual effects were great. Alan Silvestri's return to score the Avengers soundtrack, which I mean Avengers Infinity War, was great. The direction of the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe Russo, was great. They did an amazing job with the third Avengers movie. And I know the editing itself was a bit of a cliffhanger and a surprise, literally setting up which literally sets up Avengers Endgame perfectly. All right, now we are moving on to my number one choice. Number one, The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Taking the top spot on this list is heading there and back to Middle Earth. Yeah, but we just started from The Hobbit at number 10, going all the way up to number 1, which is The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys saw this coming. Yes, and I'm pretty sure you have. Because the Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King is the epic conclusion to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where the Fellowship is fighting the armies of Mordor and destroying the One Ring. That's right. And man, just like Infinity War, the story itself was all over the place. And yes, the Return of the King is also based off of the Return of the King book, which is written by J.R.R. Tolkien. And Peter Jackson did an amazing job with this movie, including the other Lord of the Rings movies, especially The Hobbit. I thought he did good with the Hobbit trilogy as well, but the Lord of the Rings: Return of the King was actually one of his best movies that he actually did of all time. Literally, the performances of the cast was great. I mean, I wish I could name off a lot of cast members, but it's just so many to name. It would have taken a lot of time to do. But anyway, moving on, Howard Shore's music score was great as always. The visual effects were amazing, particularly the Army of the Dead. They literally nailed the visual effects on the Army of the Dead perfectly. In The Lord of the Rings, the art direction was amazing, and I thought the setting was great since it takes place in Middle-earth. Not to mention, they had to film it in New Zealand, which is also amazing. And not to mention, it seems like New Zealand looks like Middle-earth as well. But moving forward, the costume design was great. Characters, as always, was memorable and amazing. And the final battle for Middle-earth was great as well. And fun fact, it won 11 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, literally sweeping the Oscars, tying with Ben-Hur and Titanic for winning 11 Academy Awards. That is actually a very true fact. And that is why The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King is considered to be my number one favorite third installment of all time. Okay, that was it. That was my third episode of Codo's Cinema. So, what do you guys think? You think I'm missing some third installments, or you think this is actually good? Well, to me, I think this is pretty good. But if you guys have any third installment ideas, feel free to do one. Hey, if you guys have favorite third installments, feel free to do it. It doesn't have to be from my list, but it can be from your list of your own. Anyway, this is actually pretty good. All right, thank you so much for tuning in to Codo's Cinema, and thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good Monday and an amazing week We also got family weekend coming up this coming weekend, so enjoy your family weekend. And good luck to the Panthers, to our football team, the Panthers, this week as they go up against Tennessee Tech. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in to Codo's Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo. Have a good Monday afternoon and have an amazing week. And I'll see you all next week.